Donald Trump is a fascist. No news there, right? Well, just this week, his administration proposed a classic bit of jackboot fascism. The Justice Department suggested that protesters should be persecuted for sedition. That means arrested and tried for seeking to overthrow the government. In other words, they want to redefine the First Amendment of the Constitution to say you can speak in protest just so long as you don't go too far. And the Trump administration, of course, decides what is too far. This is fascism, and we cannot be numb to these tendencies. But here's the other point. The fact that Trump and his apparatchiks are fascists does not mean that everyone who supports him is a fascist. This is important because the election must send a clear repudiation of Trump and his fascism. Stamp it out now before it's too late. Part of doing that is getting every anti-fascist, every single one of us, to vote in a coalition. But another part of this victory should be pulling away from Trump those supporters who are not fascist themselves and just need to be reminded how dangerous Trump really is, or perhaps even educating them. Some people do support Trump because of his anti-democratic, militaristic, authoritarian, racist ways. On another day, we will discuss the brilliant Eric Hoffer, the West Coast longshoreman who long ago explained why so many people are attracted to authoritarianism. Read him in the meantime, Eric Hoffer. But today, I want to talk to you about the people who voted for Trump because they wanted lower taxes or because they wanted health care and for some reason believed that Trump would deliver it, or because their job was being chewed up and spit out by globalization and loved Trump's promise to get tough on trade, which of course he didn't. There is nothing about those views that actually says fascism. And frankly, it was the Clinton campaign's fault in not organizing around healthcare and ending TPP. In fact, many of these people are pretty close to the things we as progressives believe. So if you can't reason with a fascist, I say you are absolutely right. But then I also say not all of Trump's backers are fascists, and we can and should talk to them because they are feeling the same pain that we are. Trump wants to demonize us. We are at the radical left, right? That he tries to terrify people with. We see the ads with Ilhan and Rashida and AOC and Nancy Pelosi all lumped together. Scary radical left feminists coming for you. Part of not letting him win is to refuse to use his tactics. Instead of demonizing his supporters as basket of deplorables and labeling them all fascists, let's find the ones who don't really believe in the worst of what he believes, but support him because they believe in something he believes, or at least something that he says he believes. We all know someone like that. I have a member of my extended family who wanted low taxes, so she voted for Trump. She lives her life, tunes out the noise of politics, pays attention to voting in the last few weeks, like most voters do actually, and she shrugs off Trump's personality, seemingly unaware of his very real fascist tendencies. So I talked her through them. And you know what? She learned. She was open. And she was appalled. And once I said Biden's financial plan is probably a little bit more friendly to her, even though I actually think she should pay more taxes, she turned. Because she came from an immigrant family that escaped fascism. And she wears a mask and believes in science. And she also believes in fair justice. She was just informed enough to vote, but not enough to be steeped in the news. And frankly, she was in a place of privilege, which I think is hard to escape, but that's a completely other story. We have our political arguments, of course, but once she understood his abuse of power and very real racism, her vote became a tool in this existential fight for the soul of our country. And I believe more like her can be won over. And here is another example straight from today's headlines. You can read about it yourself. Google the name Olivia Troye. Until last month, she worked in the White House. She helped run the coronavirus task force. She was appalled by what she saw. At one meeting, Donald Trump, he said he was glad the virus came to America because it meant he would no longer have to shake hands with people that he felt were, quote, disgusting. That sounds like basket of deplorables, right? Yesterday, She said Donald Trump had created a constitutional crisis and that she would vote for Joe Biden. Now, Olivia Troye is a lifelong Republican, a Trump Republican. She is not one of us, not a centrist, not a leftist, and she never will be. She wasn't an MSNBC, never Trumper. But right now, she is an ally in advocating, in her words, for policies which recognize the dignity and worth of all people. I really look forward to fighting her later when we get back to arguing about which policies are best for the people. But the next 46 days are a crisis. It is about stopping fascism. People are voting right now. We need to stop fascism with a coalition, a wide coalition that includes us on the left and my Republican aunt who doesn't want to pay taxes. But first, we need to restore the basic idea that the purpose of our government is to recognize the dignity and worth of all people. This all came up for me last night pretty hard when I posted on Twitter a piece by a very interesting writer named Sarah Smarsh. She wrote it in The Guardian. She wrote a book called Heartland, a memoir of working hard and being broke in the richest country on earth. She grew up and still lives in Kansas. In another time, we might have called her a prairie populist. She lives way outside the blue filter bubble. Many of the people that she knows and loves support Trump to this day. But when she talks about them, she talks about real people, flesh and blood human beings, working people facing hardships, feeling pain. We can learn from her to listen to them, to learn how we can communicate with them. And I'm speaking to you, Biden campaign. Some of you responded to me on Twitter last night asking how I could post this, reminding me you can't reason with fascists. To say it again, that is true. You cannot reason with fascists. No words will change Donald Trump and his most loyal gang. But the people in Sarah Smarsh's world are not fascists. They are people damaged by the brutality of our economy. They saw a savior in Trump, and they were wrong about him. The people she's talking about are not the people riding around at these Trump rallies and getting on the boats and saying racist things out in the open. That doesn't mean that they don't have privilege. It doesn't mean that they don't recognize what is actually happening. But it also means that we have an opportunity to speak with them, because I think a lot of them, once they realize he did not deliver on his promises, and once they realize the injustices that he's done, some of them are actually movable. And remember, we don't actually need all of them. We need like 1 out of 10. But that doesn't mean that they are evil or that we should ostracize them forever. There is a poem by Mario Cuomo, who ran for president, was the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo's more progressive father. Mario Cuomo used to always quote this poem by a fellow named Edwin Markham, who was born in Oregon City, Oregon in the late 1920s and was the state's poet laureate. I want to read this entire poem. It's really short, so just bear with me. He drew a circle that shut me out. Heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle and took him in. He called this poem Outwitted. We can't out-yell Trump or out-muscle him, but we can outwit him by drawing a circle that includes some of his supporters. Perhaps they're the working people. Perhaps they're disgusted by his lack of humanity. Wouldn't it be delicious when they abandon him? Markham wrote another poem, by the way, his most famous. It's called Man with a Hoe, H-O-E. And it is about the suffering of working people. But that's going to be our progressive literary circle for today. Thanks for watching and listening to The Nomiki Show. But remember to click like and subscribe on YouTube, and please share on social media. If you're not already a patron, please join us for as low as $5 a month on patreon.com/The Nomiki Show for early and special content. That investment makes a huge difference. We are not corporate media raking in the dough. It's really you guys that are keeping us going. So please consider being a patron. And to our current patrons, thank you so much. We are incredibly grateful to you. We also now have swag. So check us out on thenomikishow.com to get your mugs, your totes, and your stickers.